The church bells rang across the town, echoing through the bright Saturday morning. Guests in elegant suits and shimmering gowns gathered at the venue, buzzing with excitement over the wedding of Daniel and Clara. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, the flowers, the music, the laughter. But beneath it all, Daniel had a hidden agenda that had nothing to do with love. He had invited his ex-wife, Maria, not out of courtesy, but out of pride. Years ago, when they divorced, Daniel had left her struggling, with barely enough money to feed their 3 little children. He had climbed the ladder of success since then, while Maria, to his knowledge, had stayed behind in hardship. Inviting her today was his way of flaunting his wealth, his new bride, and his glittering new life. In his mind, it would prove how far he had risen and how far Maria had fallen. But Maria had never been the kind of woman to crumble forever. She had known despair, nights of hunger, and the ache of watching her children ask questions she couldn't answer. Yet she also knew how to fight. She worked tirelessly at 3 jobs, saved every coin, and poured her love into raising their triplets, Emma, Noah, and Grace. Along the way, she discovered strength she never thought she had. The scars of betrayal gave her resilience. The burden of raising children alone gave her courage. So when that ivory envelope came in the mail with Daniel's name on it, Maria's heart sank for a moment. She could see through his intentions instantly. But instead of anger, she smiled. Life had changed. She had changed. And this invitation wasn't a chance for him to shame her. It was a chance for her to show the world who she and her children had become. The day of the wedding arrived. Guests whispered when they saw a sleek black limousine roll up to the venue. The chauffeur stepped out and opened the door with a graceful gesture. Out came Maria, radiant in an emerald green dress that shimmered under the sunlight. Her hair was styled elegantly, her posture straight, her face glowing with quiet confidence. Behind her stepped the triplets, now teenagers, tall and graceful. Emma wore a soft lavender dress. Noah looked sharp in his suit, and Grace dazzled in silver. They held their mother's hands as they walked together, a picture of unity and strength. Gasps filled the air. Guests who had known Maria only as the quiet, struggling woman from years ago could hardly believe their eyes. The murmurs rippled through the crowd, traveling faster than the music. "That's Maria? The ex-wife? She came in a limo? Look at those children, so handsome, so accomplished." Inside the hall, Daniel's confident smile faltered the moment he caught sight of them. He had expected her to arrive alone, perhaps in a faded dress, shrinking in the shadow of his wealth. Instead, she looked like the very embodiment of dignity, surrounded by the children he had abandoned. His chest tightened with unease. For the first time in years, he felt small. Maria walked with grace, meeting the eyes of the guests without flinching. She didn't need to say a word. Her presence spoke volumes. She had built a life of her own, not out of luxury, but out of love, perseverance, and faith. And her children were living proof of her triumph. During the ceremony, Daniel found himself distracted. Every time he glanced at his new bride, he could still see Maria seated across the hall, her children beside her, smiling warmly. It wasn't wealth that commanded respect in that room, it was resilience. After the vows were exchanged, the reception began. Guests crowded around Maria, not out of pity, but out of admiration. They asked about her children, her work, her life. She laughed softly, answering each with humility. The triplets shared stories of their studies, their dreams, and their gratitude for their mother. Daniel watched, a knot forming in his throat. He realized that all the wealth he had built meant little compared to the pride glowing in Maria's eyes. She had something he could never buy: authentic respect, true love from her children, and the ability to walk into any room with her head held high. As the night drew on, Maria prepared to leave. The limo pulled up once again, and she and her children stepped inside, waving politely as they departed. The guests were left in awe, murmuring about the unexpected turn of the evening. Daniel stood frozen, his bride's hand in his, but his mind elsewhere. He had tried to shame Maria, but instead, he had exposed his own emptiness. The man who thought he had won everything had lost what truly mattered long ago. Maria, riding home with her children, felt no bitterness. She didn't need revenge or triumph. She had found peace in knowing she had raised her children with dignity and strength. She had shown the world and herself that she was far from broken. Her story became a quiet inspiration for everyone who had witnessed it. It wasn't about wealth, revenge, or pride. It was about resilience, dignity, and the power of love. She had walked into that wedding not to prove anything to Daniel, but to remind herself and her children that no one could ever take away their worth. By the end of the night, it wasn't Daniel's wedding that people would remember. It was the moment Maria arrived in a limo with her triplets, strong, graceful, and victorious.